as we continue on thinking about the border and budget, the Biden administration, they're trying to make back budget, guys. They're trying to make it back. They're trying to help you out. And how they're going to try to help you out by making up for all those billions of dollars that they have spent in Ukraine. They're going to try to make some of it back by selling parts of the border wall. And now President-elect Donald Trump has blasted the Biden administration for selling off unused border wall materials at a discounted rate, which he called almost a criminal act. Trump said the auctions would cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars to repurchase the large steel bollards and concrete. He called on President Biden to please stop selling the wall and suggested his team could obtain a restraining order to halt the sales. The president-elect also said he is working with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and other Texas leaders to reacquire the materials. Trump said, what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. They know we're going to use it, and if we don't have it, we're going to have to rebuild it, and it'll cost double what it cost years ago. And that's hundreds of millions of dollars because you're talking about a lot of wall. This comes a week after videos released by the Daily Wire showed large portions of the border wall being carted off from the border to be sold at auction. The Daily Wire reported that a whistleblower at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection claimed the administration's goal was to sell off all unused border wall materials along 3 stations of Arizona's border with Mexico and Tucson, Nogales, and 3 Points by Christmas. A representative for U.S. Customs and Border Patrol said that construction and management of the border wall is handled by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which again is why we can use the U.S. Army to build a wall back, which, you know how much of a fan I am about that, and how I've talked about that in previous shows. But an official at the Department of Defense said that the materials currently being sold through online auctions were already sold off by the federal government early this year, with a large percentage of the materials being sold to a government surplus retailer called GovPlanet. So essentially, what you're seeing now is auctions by GovPlanet on materials they've already bought from the federal government, who sold them these border wall materials. So they're not actually taking down the border wall. I do want to be clear on that, so there's not a misconception that they're taking down border wall. What they're doing is they're selling materials that they had to build more border wall and selling it off. Not good either way, but there's been there's been some confusion on those two things. But again, they're trying to do everything they can to try to put roadblocks up for Donald Trump, trying to prevent him, trying to make his job harder. And what they don't realize, they don't, I don't know if you figured by now that they would understand the tenacity of Donald Trump and the dedication that he has to get this stuff done. Like, this is going to slow him down at all. I think it's great that he's working with the Texas Attorney General to try and purchase these things back, to try to prevent a huge loss to the federal government. A local leader from Yuma County. Also, I missed one piece here. The same defense official said the materials no longer belong to the U.S. government, and the Defense Department has no legal authority to recall the material or stop further resale of it. Meanwhile, a local leader for Yuma County, which is on the far western side of Arizona, confirmed that the Biden administration's sale of unused border materials had continued at a regular pace since the beginning in 2021, which is also concerning. Think of how much border material wall they have sold off in the last few years. They talked about, is this part of Kamala Harris being the so-called border czar? Was this part of her plan and trying to protect our border? Is selling off border wall? I mean, this has been going. I mean, if this has been going on this long, again, that's not a good thing, right? I guess they're trying to say, oh, it's not just because Trump won. We've been doing this for years. That's even worse. That's not any better. You've literally been doing this, and now we have to rebuild and repurchase all of these materials that you have just wasted and sold for pennies on the dollar to some government online reseller. And now we're left with having to try to rebuild this thing when Trump gets back in. That just goes to show you how little they have cared about the border and why they lost this election. Because not only have they not secured the border, they've been actively trying to weaken it right there for years, actively trying to weaken it. And it's sad we're just now finding out about this. I would hope, I wish we would have known about this during the election. I guess not that it would matter. Trump won regardless. But it's just further thing to show that they couldn't care less about the border and stopping the invasion that was happening. And they also said they sell it constantly, every week or every other week. There are sections of the wall that go up for sale. I mean, how much of this wall have we sold? How many of these materials have we sold? Because this is very concerning at this point. They've just been actively selling off. So it tells you right there they haven't been building any wall because they've been selling it. I mean, the fact they've been doing this for years now is just, it just blows my mind. That this has gone under the radar until now. And B, just how little they have cared. This is stuff that we already had, right? It didn't take any extra money to purchase anything. All they had to do was they didn't have to put up new wall, right? Not even have to put up new wall. Just replace the wall that's there when it gets worn down or whatever, right? At least save it for that matter. But no, they didn't even do that. They want to sell off everything they have, so when something deteriorates, they don't have to rebuild it, creating holes in the wall, more for the influx and the invasion of peoples that don't come here legally. Border wall materials were listed by GovPlanet last week at $5 as the minimum opening bid for 20 tons of steel bollards on an online auction that advertised multiple lots. They said Trump said, who has, of course, made government efficiency a top priority for his administration, has said the people that are buying it are trying to buy it, are trying to make a deal with us to sell it back at hundreds of times more than we paid. Just think about how ridiculous it is, and this is just people that don't want this country to succeed. And this has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. This has to do with common sense. We won on common sense, and this is maybe one of the most egregious examples I've seen. So I'm asking you today, Joe Biden, to please stop selling the wall. It's something that people can't even believe it's happening, so hopefully Joe will be able to stop it. But he's not, because Joe's not even in the office. We still don't know where Joe is. Joe's chilling somewhere. So he's not going to stop anything. This, again, if they think, oh man, we're going to get one over on Trump here, guys. We're going to try to make it everything difficult as we can for him. Like, we're not going to make it, we don't make his job easy at all. This peaceful transition of power, they said, we're going to have this big peaceful transition of power. We're going to be above all of this stuff. Meanwhile, they try to subvert everything he does coming in by stuff like this. This is not peaceful transition of power. This is trying to ruin the next administration as much as you can, but they have solely underestimated Trump throughout this whole time, and this is just another example of it.